The Grand Council chamber of Trion Prime gleamed under the artificial lights that mimicked the dual sunset of the Bactran homeworld. Ornate crystalline pillars rose to support a dome ceiling, mapped with constellations, marking the territories of the Bactran Alliance. Around a circular table of polished blue stone sat the 12 council members, their scaled skin reflecting various hues of blue and green as they shifted nervously in their seats. In the center of the chamber stood Prophet Serux, his tall, slender frame draped in traditional silver robes that caught the light as he moved. Unlike the other Bactrans, his skin held a pale, almost translucent quality that seemed to glow from within, the mark of those rare individuals born with the gift of prophecy. "Honorable Council," he began, his voice carrying a melodic quality that commanded attention without force. "I stand before you as I have stood before your predecessors. For 9 generations, my line has served as counsel to this alliance. Today, I bring not wisdom from the past, but warnings of the future." High Counselor Vrex, the eldest among them, leaned forward. His face was etched with the blue ceremonial markings of the highest leadership caste. "Prophet Serux, the emergency assembly has been called at your request. Speak your visions plainly." Serux nodded, his large, multifaceted eyes reflecting the concerned faces surrounding him. 5 cycles from now, a darkness approaches from the outer rim. I have seen it in my meditations. The species known as the Tyran will achieve interstellar capability. A murmur rippled through the council chamber. The Tyran were a relatively primitive species by Bactran standards, inhabiting a mineral-rich system that had been under surveillance for nearly 200 cycles. While the Bactran Alliance had established observation posts at the fringes of Tyran space, contact protocols had never been initiated. "This would be cause for celebration, not alarm," remarked Councillor Zephyr, her voice tinged with skepticism. "Another species joining the interstellar community." "They will not join," Serux interrupted, a breach of protocol that silenced the chamber. "They will arrive in violence, unprepared for the vastness of what they discover, fearful of their place in the cosmos. My visions show bloodshed unlike anything our generation has known." Before any council member could respond, the chamber doors parted with a soft hiss. Commander Araxis entered, his military uniform adorned with the insignia of countless successful campaigns. Unlike the robed council members, he wore the practical armor of the Bactran Defense Force, sleek, dark material that enhanced his already imposing frame. "Forgive my tardiness," he said, though his tone carried no hint of apology. "I was completing the defense readiness assessment you requested, High Counselor." Vrex gestured to an empty seat. "Commander, your arrival is timely. Prophet Serux brings warnings of the Tyran." Araxis's expression hardened as he took his position. "Ah, the prophet speaks of dangers again. Tell me, Serux, do you ever foresee peace in your meditations, or only calamity?" The subtle jab did not go unnoticed. For years, Araxis had been vocal about his distrust of the prophetic class, preferring tactical data over visions. Yet, his military brilliance had earned him a place of influence that even the council respected. Serux maintained his composure. "I see what the universe reveals. Commander, I take no pleasure in delivering warnings of conflict. Then, perhaps today you might appreciate a solution, rather than merely defining the problem." Araxis rose from his seat and approached the central display. With a wave of his hand, he activated a holographic projection of the Tyran solar system. "Honorable Council, Prophet Serux is correct about one thing. Our observation posts have detected accelerated technological development among the Tyran. Their progression toward interstellar travel has increased exponentially in the past cycle." The hologram zoomed in on a space station orbiting the 3rd planet, clearly of Tyran design though primitive by Bactran standards. "What Prophet Serux fails to mention," Araxis continued, is that our surveillance indicates hostile intent. The Tiran have detected our observation posts and have begun militarizing their approach to space. Serux stepped forward. That is speculation, Commander. Their detection of our presence would naturally cause defensive posturing. Is that what you call this? Araxis manipulated the display, showing intercepted Tiran communications, weapons designs, military formations, all seemingly oriented toward space defense. They prepare for war, not contact. High Counselor Vrex raised a hand to silence the brewing argument. What do you propose, Commander? Araxis straightened, his eyes gleaming with conviction. A preemptive strike, precise, surgical, and decisive. We target their military capabilities and space infrastructure only. By demonstrating our overwhelming technological superiority, we establish clear dominance without the need for prolonged conflict. The council chamber erupted in overlapping voices, some expressing outrage, others thoughtful consideration. The Bactrin alliance had not engaged in offensive military action for over 30 cycles, maintaining its position through diplomatic relations and defensive posturing. Councillor Marielle, representative of the civilian population and known for her moderate views, was the first to regain her composure. Commander, you're suggesting we abandon centuries of non-intervention policy based on intercepted communications we may not fully understand. I'm suggesting we protect our civilization, Araxis replied firmly. The Tiran are aggressive, territorial, and resourceful. If we allow them to achieve interstellar capability on their terms, they will pose a genuine threat. A show of force now saves countless lives later. Serux felt a familiar sensation, the cold clarity that preceded a prophetic vision. The chamber around him seemed to fade as images flashed before his eyes. Warships in formation, planets burning, endless cycles of violence spanning generations. When he spoke again, his voice had taken on the resonant quality that marked prophetic utterance. If you strike first, they'll never stop. The simple statement hung in the air, carrying weight beyond the 7 words themselves. Serux continued, I have seen it. Violence begets violence in an unending cycle. The Tiran will not cower or surrender as you predict, Commander. They will unify against an external threat in ways they never could in peace. Their retaliation will span generations. Araxis scoffed. Poetic, but strategically naive. The Tiran lack the technology to pose any meaningful threat to us. By the time they recover from our initial strike, we will have established peace terms. You mistake technological superiority for victory, Saru countered. History teaches that determined species find ways to overcome such disadvantages. High Counselor Vrex stood, his ceremonial robes flowing around him. Enough. This matter requires more than debate. It requires decision. He looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. We will vote. The future of our relationship with the Tiran hangs in the balance. As the council prepared for their deliberation, Saru caught the eye of Marielle, the only council member who seemed genuinely troubled by Araxis's proposal. In her, he saw a potential ally for peace, but whether her voice would be enough remained uncertain. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone had anticipated. 7-5 in favor of Araxis's preemptive strike. The commander didn't bother hiding his satisfaction, as the decision was recorded in the council archives. Preparations will begin immediately, he announced. I assure the council that this operation will be precise, minimizing Tiran casualties while maximizing strategic impact. As the council members filed out of the chamber, Serux remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of the Tiran homeworld, a blue-green planet not unlike Tryon Prime itself. Marielle approached him, her expression solemn. I voted against this, she said quietly, as did 4 others. It wasn't enough, Serux replied, his voice hollow. What happens now, Prophet? Will your vision come to pass? Sirux turned to her, his eyes reflecting a sadness that transcended the moment. The future is like water, counselor. It flows along paths of least resistance, unless acted upon by sufficient force. The Council has chosen a path. Now we must prepare for its consequences. The first strike against the Tiran observation post was executed with the precision that had become Commander Araxis's hallmark. Bactran vessels emerged from hyperspace, neutralized the station's minimal defenses, and systematically disabled their communications and propulsion systems. Within moments, the Tiran outpost was effectively neutralized, its occupants contained but unharmed. Standing on the bridge of the flagship Celestial Defender, Araxis watched the operation unfold through tactical displays. "Perfect execution," he commented to his second-in-command. "Minimal damage, no casualties. The Tiran will understand the message. We could have destroyed them, but chose restraint." From a corner of the bridge, Sirux observed in silence. He had insisted on witnessing the operation firsthand, despite Araxis's objections. The Council had ultimately granted his request, though his role was strictly observational. "You seem disappointed, Prophet," Araxis remarked, noticing Sarek's expression. "Did you hope for bloodshed to validate your warnings?" "I hope only for peace, Commander," Saru replied. "But peace built on intimidation is merely delayed conflict." Araxis smiled thinly. "Then I welcome you to be proven wrong. In 3 rotations, we will initiate contact with the Tiran leadership and establish terms for peaceful coexistence. They will understand our technological superiority and accept the natural order." The response from the Tiran came sooner than anyone had anticipated, and in a form no one had predicted. Just as the Bactran fleet was preparing to return to Tryon Prime, alarms sounded throughout the flagship. A small fleet of Tiran vessels, crude by Bactran standards, but surprisingly numerous, had emerged from the shadow of their planet's moon. "Impossible," Araxis muttered, staring at the tactical display. "Our intelligence indicated they had no more than 5 space-capable vessels." "Intelligence fails when it underestimates determination," Sirux said quietly. The Tiran attack was chaotic but relentless. What they lacked in technology, they compensated for with numbers and a seemingly reckless disregard for their own safety. 3 Bactran support vessels suffered damage before defensive protocols could be fully engaged. "Return fire," Araxis ordered, his voice tense. "Defensive measures only. I want those ships disabled, not destroyed." The battle was brief, but costly. Though the Bactran fleet ultimately repelled the attack, the Tiran had managed to inflict unexpected damage to their logistics vessels, a tactical choice that revealed more strategic thinking than Araxis had credited them with. As the Tiran vessels retreated, Araxis turned to his tactical officer. "Damage assessment? 3 ships requiring significant repairs. Commander, 2 casualties, 17 injured." Araxis's expression darkened. "The Tiran?" "4 vessels destroyed, sir. Unknown casualties." Sirux closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of lives lost, the first casualties in what he feared would be an extended conflict. "They targeted our supply chain," he observed. "Not our weapons or command vessels. They're thinking long-term." Araxis shot him a sharp glance. "One desperate counterattack doesn't validate your prophecies of endless war. Sirux, this changes nothing. We proceed with a planned diplomatic contact, but now from an even stronger position. They've seen our defensive capabilities as well as our offensive ones." But diplomatic contact never materialized. In the cycles that followed, the Tiran employed hit-and-run tactics against Bactran outposts and supply lines. Each attack seemed designed not to win decisive victories, but to gather intelligence and test defenses. The Bactran alliance found itself in an undeclared war with an enemy that refused to engage on conventional terms. Back on Tryon Prime, Sirux immersed himself in historical records of interspecies conflicts. searching for patterns that might offer a path toward de-escalation. The council chambers, once a place of measured debate, had become a war room where Araxos's influence grew with each Tyran attack. Their strategy defies conventional military logic. Araxos explained to the council 3 cycles into the conflict. Rather than consolidating their forces for a significant engagement, they continue these sporadic attacks on peripheral targets. Perhaps because conventional engagement would result in their defeat, offered Councillor Zephyr. They're being strategic with limited resources. Or perhaps, Serux interjected, having been summoned to the council meeting, they are following a different strategic doctrine altogether. I've analyzed historical conflicts involving species with technological disparities. The Tyran approach mirrors guerrilla tactics, wearing down a superior force through attrition rather than direct confrontation. Araxos dismissed the observation with a wave. Historical parallels are interesting but irrelevant. The Tyran aren't following some ancient playbook. They're reacting out of fear and anger, and they're becoming more dangerous with each engagement as they adapt to our technology. He manipulated the holographic display to show the most recent Tyran attack, a raid on a Bactran communications relay that had resulted in the capture of sensitive technology. This cannot continue, Araxos declared. I propose we escalate our response, a direct strike against their military infrastructure on their homeworld. Show them that their hostile actions have consequences. High Counselor Vrex looked troubled. You assured us the initial strike would be sufficient, Commander. Now you advocate bringing war to their homeworld? I advocated responding to their aggression, Araxos corrected. They chose escalation, not us. Serux stepped forward. Honorable Council, I urge caution. My visions have not changed. This path leads to prolonged conflict. Your visions have become a self-fulfilling prophecy, Araxos snapped. You warned of Tyran aggression, and now you use that aggression to argue against an effective response. Councillor Morale, who had remained largely silent in recent meetings, finally spoke. What alternative do you propose, Prophet Serux? We cannot simply allow these attacks to continue. Serux moved to the center of the chamber. Direct communication, not demands or threats, but genuine dialogue. The Tyran may be more receptive than we assume. They've ignored all communication attempts since the first engagement, Araxos pointed out. Because those communications came alongside military actions, Serux countered. I propose a different approach, a single vessel, under a flag of truce, with me as the envoy. The proposal was met with mixed reactions, but Araxos's counter was immediate and forceful. Absolutely not. The Tyran would either destroy your ship outright or capture you for intelligence. Either way, it accomplishes nothing. It demonstrates our willingness to pursue peace, Serux insisted. Peace is achieved through strength, Araxos replied. And right now, we must show strength, not weakness. The council deliberated in private, leaving Serux and Araxos waiting outside the chamber. The tension between them had grown palpable, transforming from philosophical disagreement to personal animosity. You're willing to sacrifice countless Bactran lives for your idealistic notions, Araxos said quietly. And you're willing to create endless war rather than admit a strategic error, Serux replied. When the council's decision came, it was decisive. Araxos's plan for a direct strike against the Tyran homeworld was approved. Serux's proposal for diplomatic outreach was rejected, though the council agreed to include a final communication offering peace terms alongside the military action. The escalation of the conflict brought unexpected consequences. As Bactran forces prepared their assault on the Tyran homeworld, intelligence reports indicated a significant shift in Tyran society. The previously fragmented global structure, divided into competing nation-states, had begun to unify under a single banner. The external threat posed by the Bactran alliance had accomplished what centuries of internal politics had failed to achieve: a united Tyran planet. The strike against the Tiran homeworld was executed with precision, targeting military installations and space launch facilities while avoiding population centers. Araxes personally oversaw the operation from the command ship, ensuring that civilian casualties were minimized. "See, Prophet," he said to Serux, who again had insisted on witnessing the operation. "Surgical precision. Their military capability will be set back by decades, but their civilian infrastructure remains intact. This is how you end a conflict decisively." Serux watched the tactical displays as Bactrian weapons found their targets with unerring accuracy. "You assume they will accept defeat," he said. "But what if they choose vengeance instead?" Araxes smiled confidently. "With what resources? We've neutralized their offensive capabilities. Now they'll have no choice but to accept our terms." The Bactrian forces withdrew after confirming their objectives had been achieved, leaving behind a communication beacon, broadcasting peace terms in all known Tiran languages. Araxes returned to Tryon Prime as a hero, having delivered what appeared to be a decisive victory with minimal Bactrian casualties. For almost a full cycle, the Tiran were silent. No attacks, no communications, no detectable military activity. Araxes presented this as evidence of success. The Tiran had learned their lesson and were either rebuilding or considering the peace terms. Serux saw it differently. "They're planning," he warned the council. "This silence isn't submission, it's preparation." But as the peaceful cycles stretched on, even some of Serux's supporters began to wonder if Araxes had been right all along. Perhaps a demonstration of overwhelming force had been exactly what was needed to establish peace. The truth was revealed exactly one cycle after the strike on the Tiran homeworld. It began with anomalous readings from the defensive perimeter around Tryon Prime, subtle distortions that were initially dismissed as sensor malfunctions. By the time the Bactrian defense forces recognized the threat, it was too late. A fleet of Tiran vessels emerged from hyperspace directly within the defensive perimeter of Tryon Prime, an impossibility given their presumed technological level. These weren't the crude vessels encountered in previous engagements. They were sleeker, more advanced, and far more numerous than anyone had anticipated. In the council chamber, alarms blared as the holographic display showed the unfolding attack. Araxes, summoned from military headquarters, stared in disbelief at the tactical readouts. "How did they achieve hyperspace technology?" Counselor Zephyr demanded. "Your reports indicated they were decades away from such capability." "They must have captured and reverse-engineered our technology," Araxes replied, his confident demeanor cracking for the first time. "The communications relay attack. They took more than we realized." Serux watched in silence as the Tiran fleet engaged the orbital defenses of Tryon Prime. Their tactics had evolved, showing a sophisticated understanding of Bactrian defensive protocols. They weren't just fighting with borrowed technology. They were fighting with accumulated knowledge of their enemy. "We need to evacuate the council to the secure facility," Araxes announced, already activating emergency protocols. "The orbital defenses won't hold against this level of assault." As if to punctuate his assessment, the chamber shook violently. The Tiran had breached the first layer of planetary defenses. "How is this possible?" High Counselor Vrex demanded, his ceremonial robes now disheveled as he braced himself against the council table. "You assured us they were neutralized." "They should have been," Araxes insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. "No species has ever adapted this quickly to such a technological gap. No species has ever been given such motivation," Serux said quietly. "We struck their homeworld. We threatened their existence. We united them against a common enemy." Another impact shook the chamber, more violent than the first. The holographic display flickered, showing Tiran landing craft breaching the atmosphere. "They're attempting a ground assault," Araxes reported, his military training taking over. "Defense Force troops will intercept, but we need to move the council now. Follow me to the evacuation shuttles." As the council members were led toward the secure exits, Sarux remained in the chamber, his eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the Tiran advance. Their landing pattern wasn't random. They were targeting specific locations with surgical precision, just as the Bactrian forces had done to their homeworld. "Prophet, we must evacuate," Mariel urged, returning to pull him along. "The defense perimeter around the council chamber won't hold much longer." "Go," Sarix told her. "I'll follow." But as she reluctantly departed, he knew he was telling a half-truth. There was something he needed to see first, something only he could understand. The Tiran ground forces moved with unexpected discipline, bypassing civilian areas and focusing on military and government installations. They weren't seeking wholesale destruction or civilian casualties. They were executing a precisely targeted decapitation strike against Bactrian leadership. Just as Araxes had done to them, the realization struck Sarux with the force of prophecy fulfilled. The Tiran weren't just retaliating, they were mirroring. Every strategic decision made by the Bactrians was being reflected back. An echo of violence answered with violence. If you strike first, they'll never stop. The council evacuation had barely begun when the Tiran forces breached the government district. Defensive barriers that should have held for days fell in hours as the Tiran deployed weapons clearly derived from captured Bactrian technology, but modified in ways that exploited previously unknown vulnerabilities. In the secure bunker beneath the council chamber, Araxes coordinated the defense with increasing desperation. Reports from across the planet painted a grim picture. The Tiran had achieved surprise total. Their forces were better equipped than intelligence had indicated, and their tactical approach suggested detailed knowledge of Bactrian defensive protocols. "How long until reinforcements arrive from the outer colonies?" High Counselor Vrex demanded. 3 cycles at minimum," Araxes replied grimly. "The Tiran have established blockades at all hyperspace approach vectors." The bunker shook as another impact registered above. Dust sifted down from the ceiling, settling on the shoulders of the council members, who had once debated in splendor, now huddled in fear. "We've lost the eastern defensive grid," a communications officer reported. "Tiran forces are approaching the council district." Araxes's expression hardened. "Initiate Protocol Omega. The council chamber cannot fall into enemy hands." Protocol Omega, the complete destruction of the council chamber and all sensitive data it contained. It was a measure of last resort, never implemented in the Alliance's history. "Wait," Counselor Mariel interjected. "Where is Prophet Sarux? He never joined the evacuation." Araxes checked the security feeds, his expression darkening further. "He's still in the main chamber. Stubborn fool." On the monitor, they could see Sarux standing calmly in the center of the council chamber as the battle raged outside. He appeared to be waiting. "We can't delay Protocol Omega," Araxes insisted. "The Tiran will breach the outer defenses any moment. All sensitive information must be destroyed." "Including Sarux," Mariel challenged, her voice rising. "He's our most valuable cultural asset, the last of the prophetic line." "He made his choice," Araxes replied coldly. "We make ours." Before the argument could continue, the security feeds from the council chamber changed. The massive doors had opened, admitting not Bactrian defenders, but a contingent of Tiran soldiers. They moved with precision, securing the perimeter before allowing a final figure to enter. The Tiran ambassador Valix stood taller than his soldiers, his exoskeletal frame gleaming with embedded technology that seemed both organic and mechanical. Unlike the battle armor of his troops, he wore a formal garment that resembled diplomatic attire, though modified for the physiological differences of his species. On the security monitor, the council watched in stunned silence as Sarux turned to face the Tiran leader. No weapons were raised, no threats were made. Instead, Saru extended his hands, palms upward in the ancient Bactrian gesture of peaceful parley. "What is he doing?" Araxes hissed. "Attempting surrender on behalf of the Alliance? He has no authority. He's communicating, Morale realized aloud, just as he proposed to the council. On the screen, Valix approached Serux cautiously. The Tyran's face was difficult for Bactrians to read, with its compound eyes and mandibular structure, but his body language conveyed wariness, rather than hostility. Words were exchanged, though the security feed carried no audio. Serux spoke at length, his gestures measured and formal. Valix responded, his movements becoming less guarded as the conversation progressed. "We need to act now," Araxis insisted. "The longer we wait, the more intelligence they gather." "They're not gathering intelligence," Counselor Zephyr observed. "They're negotiating." After what seemed an eternity, Serux turned toward the security camera, aware he was being observed from the bunker below. He raised a hand, fingers spread in the signal for communication. "He wants to speak with us," High Counselor Vrex realized. Araxis shook his head. "It could be coercion. The Tyran may have threatened him. Or perhaps," Morale suggested, "he's achieved what your military strategy could not: direct diplomatic contact." After a tense debate, the council activated the communication link to the chamber above. Serux's voice came through clearly, though strained. "Honorable Council, I am speaking freely and without coercion. Ambassador Valix of the United Tyran Coalition has agreed to discuss terms for ceasing hostilities." "Prophet Serux," High Counselor Vrex responded, "we are receiving you. What terms does the Tyran ambassador propose?" "Not terms of surrender," Serux clarified. "Terms of mutual withdrawal and non-aggression. A return to the state before our first strike against their observation post, with established communication protocols to prevent future misunderstandings." Araxis stepped forward. "And we're to believe they'll honor such terms after launching this attack. They penetrated our defenses, threatened our leadership. As we did to them," Serux interrupted. "They mirror our actions, Commander. When we struck surgically, they responded in kind. When we escalated to their homeworld, they brought the conflict to ours. The cycle can continue, or it can end. That choice is ours to make." The council chambers fell silent as the implications sank in. The Tyran weren't offering surrender. They were offering parity, equal standing, mutual respect, and an end to hostilities that neither side had truly wanted. "How can we trust them?" Araxis demanded. "This could be a ploy to lower our defenses." "The same way they must trust us," Serux replied. "Through verified actions, not mere words. Ambassador Valix has already ordered his forces to cease advance and establish defensive positions only. No further Bactrian casualties have been reported in the past cycle." High Counselor Vrex looked to his fellow council members, reading the shifting sentiment in their expressions. Even those who had supported Araxis's aggressive stance now seemed willing to consider alternatives in the face of a conflict that had quickly exceeded worst-case projections. "Prophet Serux," Vrex said finally, "tell Ambassador Valix we are prepared to discuss terms. A formal delegation will join you in the council chamber." As arrangements were made for the historic meeting, Araxis pulled Serux aside, his expression a mixture of frustration and grudging respect. "This doesn't change the fact that they attacked us," he said quietly. "After we attacked them," Serux reminded him, "the cycle began with our choice. Commander, it can end with our choice as well. And if they betray these negotiations, if this is merely a tactical pause before a greater assault?" Serux met his gaze steadily. "Then you will have your war, and I will have been proven wrong. But ask yourself, is being right worth the cost of endless conflict?" The negotiations were neither simple nor quick. Decades of suspicion couldn't be erased in a single meeting, and both sides brought legitimate grievances to the table. Ambassador Valix proved to be a formidable diplomat, neither conceding points easily nor making unreasonable demands. The Tyran, it became clear, sought recognition and security, not conquest. 3 cycles passed before a formal peace treaty was signed, in the same council chamber where the decision to strike had been made. The terms established clear boundaries, communication protocols, and a framework for future diplomatic relations. Neither side claimed victory, and neither admitted defeat. As the Tiran delegation prepared to return to their vessels, Ambassador Valix approached Saru privately. "You were right," the ambassador said, his translated voice carrying an undertone of harmonics that the translation system couldn't fully capture. "When you said we mirror each other." "Our species are not so different," Sarux replied. "We both protect what we value." "The difference," Valix observed, "is that you saw the pattern while others were still caught within it. My analysts are curious. Is your prophetic ability biological or technological?" Sarux smiled faintly. "Neither, and both. It's the ability to see patterns across time, rather than merely through space. Your species may develop similar capabilities as you explore the cosmos further." "Perhaps," Valix said, "though I wonder if we would use such foresight any better than your council did." "That," Sarux replied, "is the eternal question for all sentient beings. Knowing the right path and choosing it are separate challenges." As the Tiran forces withdrew from Bactran space and life on Trion Prime began returning to normal, Sarux found himself increasingly isolated from the Council. Though his warnings had been vindicated and his diplomatic initiative had succeeded where military action had failed, many still resented the implication that the conflict had been avoidable from the start. Araxis, demoted from his command position but still influential in military circles, avoided Sarux entirely. The commander had lost standing but not conviction. In private conversations, he maintained that a more aggressive approach would have achieved total victory rather than compromise. Only Councillor Merrill sought Sarux's counsel regularly, recognizing that the events had changed him as profoundly as they had changed the Alliance. "The Council is considering a permanent diplomatic posting to Tiran space," she informed him during one such visit. "An ambassador who would maintain the peace we've established." Sarux nodded, unsurprised. "A wise precaution." "They're considering you for the position," Morale added, "though some suggest it's a way to remove your influence from Trion Prime." "Politics has never been my concern," Sarux replied. "Only consequences." "And what consequences do you foresee now, Prophet? Will this peace hold?" Sarux turned to gaze out the viewport of his chambers, where the twin moons of Trion Prime hung in the evening sky, one bathed in light, the other in shadow, a perpetual balance. "Peace is never permanent," he said after a long moment, "but neither is conflict. What matters is the pattern we establish, whether we choose to perpetuate cycles of violence or break them when we have the chance." "You don't sound entirely optimistic," Mariel observed. "I'm entirely realistic," Sarux corrected. "Our encounter with the Tiran is just the beginning. The cosmos contains countless species, each with their own fears and ambitions. Some we will meet in peace, others in conflict. The question isn't whether challenges will come, but how we'll meet them when they do." "And how should we meet them?" Mariel asked. Sarux turned back to her, his eyes reflecting the starlight from beyond the viewport. "With wisdom before weapons, with understanding before judgment, and always with the awareness that how we act shapes not just our future, but the future of those we encounter." In the cycles that followed, the peace with the Tiran held, though not without occasional tensions. Cultural exchanges began cautiously, then expanded as mutual understanding grew. The Tiran proved to be innovative and adaptable, qualities that had made them dangerous opponents, but valuable allies. Sarux did accept the ambassadorial position, recognizing that his prophetic abilities could serve as a bridge between species whose natural instincts might otherwise lead to misunderstanding. On the Tiran homeworld, he established what would eventually become known as the Concordance, a meeting place for diverse species to resolve conflicts before they escalated to violence. Sometimes, in quiet moments between diplomatic functions, Serux would look up at the alien sky of the Terran world, so different from the twin-mooned heavens of Trion Prime, and wonder about the paths not taken. Had the Council chosen differently? Had Araxes been less certain, or Serux more persuasive? How many lives might have been spared the brief but costly war? Such questions had no answers. Of course, the past was fixed, only the future malleable, and even a prophet could not see all possible branches of what might be. What Serux knew with certainty was the lesson written in the scars of both Bactran and Terran worlds, that the first strike in any conflict carried consequences far beyond its immediate impact. It set patterns in motion, created reflections and echoes that could reverberate for generations. If you strike first, they'll never stop. The words remain true, not as prophecy, but as observation of the nature of sentient beings throughout the cosmos. Yet the inverse also held hope. If you extend peace first, that too created its own echoes across time. Under the light of foreign stars, Serux committed himself to ensuring that the peace so painfully achieved would cast the longer shadow.